want to turn to that old friend of the show and really the man of the hour. People have been heaping praise upon one of my pals and mentors and bosses, Stephen K. Bannon. Good morning, sir.
So I officially want to go on the record. This is not an interview. This is not a conversation. It's just a couple of old friends catching up.
Shooting the bull. Absolutely. This is absolutely not an interview. Thank you so much for joining us. I think the listeners are thrilled to hear from you, Steve. I mean, just you could hear people tearing up talking about you, and it's totally genuine. So congratulations, first of all.
Well, that's why I wanted to come on the show this morning in the first show after the victory last night to just thank all the callers, all the listeners to the show, and all the people who go to Breitbart. I think you can say your voice was heard last night, and it's if you listen to the show over its last year, you've heard the frustrations, you've heard the recommendations, you've heard it all on the show. And so last night, I think you saw what we call it the Hobbits. The Hobbits finally had a chance to speak. Now, I didn't have a lot of chance to watch any of the media.
Yeah.
Or very little of the media, since I was in a data room as we were going through the details of the different, precincts and the demographics, or all the different areas of the country that we were looking at as the election started to unfold. So I didn't get a chance to see some of the media stuff you were talking about. But I just wanted to make sure that the entire audience out there at Breitbart News Daily and the Weekend Show know that your voice, don't think people aren't listening to you.
Well, Steve, and look, I don't like to oversell things. I like to undersell things, if anything. But I absolutely feel like that this audience saved the republic last night. I don't think Donald Trump could have done it without them. And I think the stakes were that high. And I didn't say that previously in the show because I'm like you. I'm an optimist. And I thought if Hillary won, it would have been by a narrow margin. She would have had a really hard time governing. And our voices are loud and getting louder. And we would have kept up the fight. We would have kept up hope. But I don't know if the country, the Constitution, the founding fathers, what they believed would have survived 4 more years of the globalist left. I just don't, Steve. And this audience saved the day.
I didn't get a chance to watch the coverage last night because, like I said, we had a big data center that we were going through.
Yeah.
Really constant returns. How was the coverage? Because I heard you mentioning it with the previous caller in your introduction. How was it?
Well, we had a wonderful broadcast on Sirius XM 125. So we hit our special with Webb and Will Cow, and I was on the news desk giving updates on returns as they came in, and hearing from people around the Sirius XM family, like Jared Rizzi, the White House correspondent, and it was great. We had great caller interaction, streamed at Breitbart.com. Really good response. I think people really enjoyed it. They watched it till late into the night, early into the morning. And elsewhere around the world, a lot of those same people, Steve, that have called this election wrong every step of the way, getting to pop off and give their opinions. And I was joking earlier, but it's not really a joke. I was hoping at least one person on CNN or Fox News would have just said, listen, I've been wrong every time I've opened my mouth for the last 18 months, and I'm not going to do it tonight. I'm going to leave because I'm not going to burden with the American people with the BS that I'm trying to sell them. But of course, that's not going to happen. You see the same faces giving the same incorrect opinions.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that for the listeners to the show is that I think probably the only people in the universe that covered and worked on both Brexit in any level of detail and this election last night were Raheem Kassam, Alex Marlowe, and the one and only mega producer, Caroline McGarrett's.
She's laughing maniacally right now, Steve. You've tickled her funny bone.
It's quite serious though. That's.
I agree with that.
In the calls to the show, I think in one of the few comments I made, or the comment I made last time I talked on the 1-year anniversary of the show about the New York Times reporter that mocked and ridiculed, the people at a Trump rally in Mississippi about they wouldn't know who Nigel Farage was. And he kind of chuckled with this smirk on his face.
Yes.
And all the people in the morning show shows, smirked and laughed with him. And I said, wow, this guy doesn't understand that Nigel Farage is a real hero to those people. And they know about him because they, listen to the Breitbart show and go to Breitbart London and to the Breitbart pages and obviously other, pages like Drudge and others. But they know who this is, and that's why they miss Brexit so badly, and they miss this because they're not. They think it is beneath them to listen to the callers that call into a show like.
Well, because they thought the aristocrats and the oligarchs throughout the world could control the strings like puppeteers with a marionette, and the people spoke yesterday and said that that's not the case, at least in the United States. Steve, so when was the moment that you thought you guys had a chance last night?
I never doubted for a second. I mean, I never doubted.
Okay, let me rephrase it. When was the moment where you thought you had it? When was because for me, it was when I looked down and Ohio was 55% in and you guys were up by 12 points. I thought this is it. The other thing was when I saw these Reuters exit polls, when you're just seeing overwhelming desire for change. 75% want to take the country back from the rich and powerful. 72% think the economy is rigged for the rich and powerful. This is stuff that makes you, that gave me a lot of hope.
It was, I make it analogous, to the time, you and I were working the homepage on the night of Brexit, and I think you and Caroline and Raheem were actually in London, and I was back in Washington at the time, and I remember that when the first, Nigel went out and actually conceded a concession speech over a couple of pints, and you and I were not particularly. We didn't think that was too wise a move since it was still relatively early in the evening, and I think it was 10 o'clock. In British time, and you and I were talking about certain, towns, cities, these industrial England industrial towns that had been heavily labor, and to see how they were going to come in, and we had a couple picked to really watch. And when those, I forget even the names of the towns, the small towns, when they started to come in, you and I said, watch the money markets, start to implode. And I think it was, the early exit. We got early exit polls. Which had had really demographics in which you just talked about where the American people were, and also had some early exits actually how the candidates had done. And I will tell you that if you looked at those early exit polls, you were probably not thinking that we were going to be celebrating over at the Hilton Hotel last night, because the early exit polls looked quite grim. And but I spent some time and tried to collect myself and just looked at the demographics and also the questions. It cut to the heart of what you just said, right, about the change and wanting change. And so we just, people just said, okay, we're going to go about our normal work. Obviously, the exit polls can't be correct. And then it's Florida. We really concentrated quite heavily on Florida.
Yeah.
And we had certain areas throughout the country, in both North Carolina and Ohio, that we were really looking at. And as those started to come in, I think we felt quite confident. So it was never no lack of confidence, and I think that my analogy to the British exit, to the Brexit movement, was really what the exit poll showed about people's desire for change, right, and desire for real change, just not the type of change that gets talked about on cable TV. So that's when I felt that, well, if this is correct, if this is correct, and you'll see it start to roll across what we called the core four, which is the four we felt we had to win to give ourselves multiple paths to victory, which was Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and Iowa. And I did agree with a lot of people that North Carolina was going to be her firewall, and then a second would be the Upper Midwest, which, as you know, having listened to the show, we always felt that Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, places like that would always be in play because of this populist message. So,
right, and trade and 94.6 million people out of the workforce. I mean, that stuff resonates. Steve,
so if you listen, by the way, if you listen to Breitbart News Daily and you read the pages of Breitbart, you're not surprised this morning.
No.
If you read the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times of London, I think for the audiences that I think, because I know they refer to you to all the audience members as stupid and don't know what's going on, and or
Klansmen, Steve. We're all Klansmen.
Yeah, all these names they throw at you. It's the same thing as Brexit. That they didn't really understand Brexit. They didn't understand what the underlying desire for people to have control of their own lives that Brexit represented. I think you saw the same thing last night, and I just I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to see the media meltdown because we're too really hunkered into.
Yeah, well, it's the same old. They're trying to declare it sexist and racist, and even though Donald Trump has outperformed Mitt Romney with Hispanics and with blacks, it's not inconvenient truths. I wonder which mainstream outlets will report on those. I'm hopeful they all will, because they should, Steve. So I want to ask what's about the next steps. It looks very well likely that you guys could pick up Michigan, which would put Donald Trump well above 300 electoral votes. He's leading there with 97 some odd percent reporting. So if he's going to have 300 something electoral votes. Republicans did very well in the Senate. They of course kept the House as predicted. He's going to be able to govern here, and this isn't just he's just not going to slide in by the skin of his teeth. He's going to actually have a pretty solid coalition. So what is the transition plan now for the next couple months?
Well, if I did that would be an interview, wouldn't it? It wouldn't be just a couple old buddies catching up.
No. He caught me. He caught me.
McGarrett's.
Oh.
I know she's sitting there going, hey, enough with the happy talk. Let's break some news.
Yeah, that's it. She busts my chops a lot. That's how the show stays sharp.
Well,
all right. You can plead the fifth on that in the spirit of the Barack Obama administration, if you'd like.
No, I'm sure that'll all be coming out over the next days and weeks ahead. So
people are really excited to hear from you, Steve, and I know you got a lot on your mind and on your plate right now.
It is not Alex Marlowe. It's not Steve Bannon. It's not the great Caroline McGarrett's or Angela Barrett or any of the people that put the show on day in and day out. But it's really the listeners. So I think you should go to work this morning. This victory is your victory, and I think obviously you got to hold the people accountable for results that lay this plan out for you. But it's a great the people that are already taking the victory lap this morning are the listeners of the show, and people that don't listen to the show but are kindred spirits, because it was a great I think victory for, as Mr. Trump said in his speech last night, the forgotten men and women in this country that have really been the backbone of this country.
Yeah, and we played this speech almost in its entirety in the first hour, and it's a very important speech because he did strike that really perfect message of making it about the movement, about the American people, the ordinary Americans who'd been forgotten by the globalist plutocrats and the oligarchs. And this is something that so long as we have freedom of speech, so long as we have freedom of information, and so long as people do as I recommend and tell 10 friends and family members about Breitbart.com, I think we got a fighting chance that he might be able to gain some ground back in Washington D.C. when he shows up in 2 months. But Steve Bannon, any final comments here for the listeners of Breitbart News Daily?
No, I'm gonna get up and get rolling, and I'll check in with you shortly. And I want to thank Caroline for reaching out to me last night and making sure I made the show this morning. So it's a great honor always to talk to this audience. So. And the great people at Sirius XM and the Patriot Channel. So thank you
Steve,
very much.
I think you'll indulge me when I say it's not happy talk when I say that we all made history together, this audience plus you and the Trump campaign. Pretty remarkable what's happening.